players, and we're rolling.
Okay, very good. Well, Patrick said that he had grown up in Chicago and was a rooter for the Chicago Cubs when he was a little boy. And have you noticed what happened this last October in Chicago? Can you believe that?
That was crazy, yeah.
I mean, there were... The celebration after the Chicago Cubs won the World Series championship for the first time since 1908. I mean, nobody alive had seen them win the World Series championship. There were 5 million people in that parade, or surrounding. That's the most people who've gathered anywhere in the world for any reason. That's 5 million people were absolutely nuts over the Chicago Cubs. And Patrick, when you were growing up, they were lovable losers, right?
They were back in the 50s.
Yeah.
They were, yeah.
So there's a lot of people that are passionate about baseball, and I'm one of them. But the book, Hometown Heroes, is a celebration of the single franchise baseball stars of the entire 20th century. And out of 18,000 people who wore a Major League Baseball uniform during that century, 18,000, there are only 177 men who qualify as single franchise players. So this is a really rare feat to be a single franchise, to play exclusively for one team and one team only for your entire career. And my arbitrary cutoff is at least 10 years. They played at least 10 years, which to me is a long career. So what was interesting about it is that I discovered that there's a certain brotherhood or a certain genre of player that seems to fit into this mold, into this fraternity, as you will, of single franchise players. And it's rare for a lot of reasons. Well, first of all, you can't be traded, you can't be released, you have to have a long career, you have to be a really good player. But what I discovered through all this research was that the qualities that these players had, which aren't exclusive to these players, but in this group, the players are really great teammates. They are extremely popular in their home cities. Ernie Banks would be an example. Patrick and I were talking about in Chicago. He could have been elected mayor. Very popular, very engaging to the fans. They are good teammates. They're good in the clubhouse. They're good. They treat their managers well. There's a lot of respect there, and because they respect everybody, their town, they get a lot of respect back, and it was amazing to see the uniformity of that respect and that enjoyment that their fans have, and the popularity that every one of these players has because of these qualities. So I think it's inherently an amazing thing that somebody could play for an exclusive franchise, and there are players that you would think were single franchise players, but through bad luck, you have to have a little bit of luck to do this. But players that you associate with a team, like a Willie Mays or a Henry Aaron, that would have ordinarily qualified, but just didn't qualify at the very end. Yogi Berra, but so they didn't make the book. You know, they're that's the downside of this. But if you go to the National Baseball Hall of Fame, has anybody been to the Hall of Fame? No? Okay. It's in Cooperstown, New York. It's in rural upstate New York. It's hard to find, actually. But the Hall of Fame, when you enter in, there are 3 statues in that Hall of Fame. And these guys are kind of the Mount Rushmore of baseball, I guess you'd call them. I mean, you could include some others probably, but these statues are of 3 people that are in the book. They are Roberto Clemente and Lou Gehrig, who gave baseball's Gettysburg Address, you know, when he retired, and Jackie Robinson, who is famous not only as a great baseball player but as a famous American for what he did. He broke the color line as the first African American to play Major League Baseball, and he was a Dodger for his entire career. So, yeah. So there's Mr. Cub. There's a lot of misters in this book, you know, where they are so clearly attached and identified with their team that they are known as Mr. Cub. And if you're from Chicago, you know who Mr. Cub is. It's Ernie Banks. So he has a statue in front of Wrigley Field is an example of that. I mean, you get your own statue, and that's pretty impressive, you know. If you're from San Diego, anybody from San Diego? No? You know Tony Gwynn as Mr. Padre, and he has a statue beyond center field at Petco Park in San Diego. He's a classic example of a single franchise player who, again, he could be elected when he was alive. He could have been elected mayor of San Diego for sure. He's just a great guy. I did have a chance to interview him. George Brett, Mr. Royal. If you're in Kansas City, he's known as the franchise and played for the Royals exclusively his entire career. As well as, so he's got a statue at the stadium, and so does Frank White, who happened to be a guy that I had a 3-hour breakfast with, and got a chance to interview Frank White. Just a great guy, just a solid, humble, just really, really good guy. You can see why he is so popular in Kansas City as well. So, Mr. Tiger, if you're from Detroit, you know who Mr. Tiger is. Al Kaline. He is just the most popular Tiger in the history of that franchise, and he's a single franchise guy. He started playing for the Tigers when he was 17 years old, and retired when he was 40. So, all with the Detroit Tigers. And he has his statue along with Charlie Gehringer there, who's probably the best second baseman in the history of Major League Baseball. Stan the Man Musial, who to this day is still Mr. Cardinal. I mean, one statue at the new Busch Stadium wasn't enough. He actually has 2 statues. So, I mean, if that's any guys to how popular he is, he's just... and just a terrific human being, just a high-quality, wonderful guy, along with Bob Gibson, who is a great pitcher there. He has his statue there in front of Busch Stadium as well. So, Mr. Brewer, had a chance to talk to Robin Yount a little bit up in Milwaukee, and he is known as Mr. Brewer. He's got his own statue outside of the stadium as well, along with Henry Aaron. So. Mr. Oriole, Cal Ripken. Cal Ripken was a guy that he broke Lou Gehrig's record for the most consecutive games played, and he's just a classic example of a single franchise player. I mean, he would stay after the games and autograph along the third and first base lines, and was really good to the fans and very popular. And just a great player and a great guy, great character. And Camden Yards, if you've ever been to Camden Yards, wonderful ballpark. I've seen I've seen games in every single one of the 30 ballparks. You know, Camden Yards is one of those ballparks that one of the newer ballparks that looks like an old ballpark. Very, very, very nice. Mr. Mariner up in Seattle, Washington. Edgar Martinez is known as Mr. Mariner. They named a street after him, Edgar Martinez Drive South. So, you know, that's pretty cool. Yeah, and that's kind of an example, another example of how they feel about, you know, their single franchise. He's the only single franchise Mariner in the history of the franchise. So again, it's pretty hard to do. Let's see, I'm frozen here a little bit, but there are others there. So I'm not sure why this is not working, but it's initializing, I guess. Okay, yeah. But these are just examples of players who are single franchise players who are just revered in their hometowns. And by the way, I discovered that most of these players have stayed in their adopted hometowns. They are, in fact, hometown heroes, and a lot of them are philanthropists. They're very community oriented. They're very active in their community, and they maintain that. And so that's an example. There would be Todd Helton in Denver. The Colorado Rockies. He's Mr. Rocky. He's the only Rocky that's qualified again. The only one. So there's a beautiful park in Pittsburgh. It's PNC Park, and in PNC Park there are 4 statues, and Hannes Wagner goes way back to the turn of the last century near home plate, and the Roberto Clemente statue is in dead center field right near the Allegheny River. And Bill Mazeroski's down the right field line, and Willie Stargell has his statue down the left field line, and they're all single franchise players. And there's some photographs of them, wildly popular, every one of them. Clemente for a lot of reasons. He was a humanitarian while he was alive, and died, you know, tragically in an airplane crash on his way to Nicaragua to help the earthquake victims. Target Field up in Minneapolis. They have a beautiful new field up there, and Tony Oliva, these guys have their own gates. It's gate number 6 for his number. And Kirby Puckett, number 34, popular in Minneapolis, but also popular in a lot of other ballparks. And Kent Herbeck, and those 3 guys have their own gates after their number. So, and Mike Schmidt, probably the best third baseman in the history of Major League Baseball, has his own statue. It's a monster. There's Mike Schmidt there in the lower left next to his statue. You can see his statue is about twice as big as he is. So it's they're honoring these guys. Johnny Bench, probably the best catcher in the history of Major League Baseball, in Cincinnati. Brand new ballpark there, great American ballpark. There are Giants. We have probably some Giants fans in the audience here, since we're pretty close to San Francisco. But these are a lot of these Giants were when they were in New York City, and but there are some San Francisco Giants in there. Probably too small for you to see there, but Jimmy Davenport, Scotty Geraltz, and Robbie Thompson are examples of some Giants that were local in San Francisco. The Brooklyn Dodgers, the Boys of Summer. I grew up in Los Angeles. I was 7 years old, Patrick, when my dad took me to the first game one of the first games at the LA Coliseum in 1958, and I happened to see a lot of these single franchise players during that season. Carl Erskine and Jim Gilliam, Pee Wee Reese, Sandy Koufax, my favorite pitcher. I grew up, being a big fan of Sandy Koufax. Don Drysdale, Carl Furillo, Carl Erskine. So yeah, I just happened to hit a sweet spot there, and my dad took me to a lot of games, and that's where actually I got the original idea was, wow, these guys are really special. So there we are, a little late. Those are examples of photographs of some of the people that I just mentioned, Roy Campanella and Jackie Robinson. I never got a chance to see either one of those players, but they're famous boys of summer. And probably the two best lefty and righty pitchers in the history of starting pitchers in baseball, Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale. So they're both single franchise. The Boston Red Sox have a lot of players who are single franchise players, and you can look at those. But an interesting thing is if you've been to Fenway Park, left field wall is called the Green Monster. It's a big green wall there, and the left fielder guards that Green Monster at Fenway Park, which is a beautiful, beautiful old ballpark. It's baseball is kind of like a religion back there in New England, and the guardians of that Green Monster, the left fielders, were all single franchise players from 1939 all the way to 1988. So for all those years, 56 straight years, the players that were guarding that wall were all single franchise Red Sox. From Ted Williams to Carl Yastrzemski to Jim Rice to Mike Greenwell, they all followed each other, and the stability of that franchise is pretty impressive. So, the New York Yankees, we probably don't have a lot of Yankee fans here in Sacramento, but the Yankees have more players than any other team, and so I don't know what would be the reasons for that. Probably because they have enough money to pay their players. But beyond that, I think once you are successful as a New York Yankee, I think it's got to the point where you don't want to play anywhere else because it's such the Big Apple is like, the fans are just amazing, and it's the biggest, best franchise in the history of any sport. And there are several guys who could have played longer, but they decided they didn't want to. They wanted to retire as a Yankee. When the Yankees gave up on them, they gave up, and they said, okay, that's it. Phil Rizzuto, Joe Collins, Don Mattingly, all those guys, well, they could have played more. Jorge Posada, Bernie Williams. Those are just a few of the people that probably could have played for other teams, but they decided to retire as a Yankee, and they wanted to be a Yankee for life. So there's a lot of pride there. A lot of Yankee captains ended up playing for the Yankees and did so exclusively. Thurman Munson, their catcher, who died tragically in a plane crash. Ron Guidry, Lou Gehrig, Derek Jeter, who was the last guy that had to retire before I could write the book. I could finish the book because he kept playing, So I think his last year was 2014. So, and the Yankee center fielders were a little bit like the left fielders for the Red Sox. The Earl Coombs was there as a center fielder for the 1927 Yankees, one of the best Yankee teams in history, and then Joe DiMaggio, and then Mickey Mantle for all those years, over 45 years in a row. The marquee position in New York City was a center. If you were a center fielder for the New York Yankees, it was big time, and none of these guys played for any other team. They just played for the Yankees the entire time. So, we've frozen again? Right? Oh, there we are. Okay. 35 years as a shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds. Davey Concepcion is a member of the Big Eight, maybe one of the best teams in history in 1975 and 76 for the Reds. And Barry Larkin, who's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Fame shortstop. Famous double play combinations: Bill Mazeroski and Gene Alley of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker of the Detroit Tigers. Detroit Tigers, these two guys played together as a double play combination for 17 years in a row, and did so exclusively for the Tigers. They're very, very popular as individuals and as a double play combination. And then Red Sox captains Yastrzemski and Jim Rice, and then Jason Varitek's a recent catcher for the Red Sox when they finally won in 2004 after 86 years without the Red Sox had that curse of the Bambino going too until they broke that in 2004. For some reason, there are a lot of third basemen in this book. I'm not sure why that is. It could be that once a team finds a really, really great third baseman, that they hold on to him and they want to play. They want to play for the same team, and so there are a lot of guys. Stan Hack is one of them. He's really the only Sacramento native, I guess you'd say. Somebody was talking about Joe Marty's. You were talking about Joe Marty's bar and grill downtown, and yeah, Stan Hack used to frequent that bar in the 30s. Yeah, so the #1 local major league player, Stan Hack. So we got a delayed reaction here, but let's see.
Here comes your technical guy.
Okay. Okay, it's initializing or something, but there is what's coming up is the story of a guy that nobody has ever heard of. I can't really say that I had heard of them either until I had done the research on him. His name is Cecil Travis, and Cecil Travis in 1941. He was, there's Cecil Travis. He was a shortstop for the Washington Nationals, and in 1941 he had the second best batting average of anybody in the American League, even better than Joe DiMaggio. And if you're a baseball history buff, 1941 was the year that Joe DiMaggio hit in 56 straight games. I mean, that was a spectacular achievement for him. And it was also happened to be the year that Ted Williams hit 406, the last 400 hitter in Major League history. And Cecil Travis hit 359 that year, ahead of Joe DiMaggio. At the end of that year, he volunteered to go to war in the infantry, and ended up shortly thereafter at the Battle of the Bulge, which, if you know anything about that battle, it was at the dead of winter, and he froze. His feet froze basically, and he didn't lose his feet, but he came back, and he wasn't the same. He wasn't the same player after that because he didn't have his balance. But essentially, what happened is he gave up a Hall of Fame career because after 10 years in the American League, at the end of 1941, his batting average was .325, and he was a shortstop. He was a really, really good player. But because of that incident, the battlefield incident, nobody knows who he is. So he gave up a Hall of Fame career for his country and never complained. Really high quality, really a high quality guy, high character guy. So I just was very impressed with Cecil Travis, and very popular also. Both of the legendary streakers, and ladies, that's not what you think it is. It's not what you think it is. Both of these guys were, they had consecutive game streaks. Lou Gehrig played in 2,130 straight games, and Cal Ripken, even though he was a shortstop, played for hundreds and hundreds more straight games in a row, and broke Lou Gehrig's record. And they both have such respect, really, in the history of baseball. These guys are both respected Hall of Fame players that are they're kind of bookends. They're kind of connected to each other because of that streak. This is an interesting photo that I got from the Library of Congress, and it's a photograph of Bob Feller in the middle of his they're both Hall of Famers. He was pitching a no-hitter at Yankee Stadium, and the batter is Joe DiMaggio, and just a great action shot. He's just let go of the ball, and the umpire is Eddie Rommel, who also is in the book as a pitcher. So he ended up being a major league umpire after his career as a pitcher was over with. So Eddie Rommel was very interesting. He what I learned, one of the things I learned about in the book was that pitchers, there were no pitch counts. People would pitch until basically their arms fell off. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, he pitched a game in Cleveland one time that they only took the Philadelphia Athletics only took 2 pitchers to that game in Cleveland, and the other pitcher, other than Eddie Rommel, after Eddie pitched batting practice, the other pitcher got shelled in the first inning, and so Eddie came in to pitch. Eddie Rommel pitched 18 innings there, and that was one of the last games he pitched because, I mean, you know, his poor arm. If you pitch 100, they have a pitch count now. Pitchers don't go more than 100 pitches. I think with batting practice and all that, he probably pitched over 600 pitches that game. So, and he won the game, but probably ended his career. So they didn't have much respect for that at the time. These are 2 Cleveland Indian pitchers who both met early deaths. Addie Joss on the left is look at that hairdo, and yeah, he died in the aughts, I think in 1908, of meningitis the day before the season started. And the gentleman on the right, Ray Chapman, is the only player in Major League history to die from being hit by a pitched ball in a game. The only one out of all the players. So that was a very tragic situation there with him. Both very popular players. The Houston Astros have a couple of guys in the book, and they're Craig Biggio and Jeff Bagwell. If you're paying attention, Jeff Bagwell was just inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame this year. And shockingly, there are 5 franchises that have never, ever had a single franchise player. Out of all the players that have played, there's not one player. And for the Arizona Diamondbacks, for the Texas Rangers, for the Miami Marlins, for the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Toronto Blue Jays, not one player has been a single franchise player. So that might be an indication why they don't have as much success, because they don't have the stability and the marquee players. These are this is a list of all the players who played at least 20 years for the same team, and that's quite a feat. Almost every single one of these guys is a Hall of Famer, with the exception of Mel Harder, who is a pitcher for the Cleveland Indians. And there's a tie between the 2 players who have played for one franchise for the most years, 23 years. And one of those players is Carl Yastrzemski, who is iconic in Boston, and the other one is Brooks Robinson in Baltimore. He is also, people named their sons Brooks in Baltimore. So. I think it comes as a space bar. There we go. You're okay. Okay. Yeah. So that's the end of my presentation. This is the original photograph, the original painting that was done by Bill Purdom. He's a nationally recognized artist. It's a fantasy painting of the single franchise Hall of Famers, and there are 52 players that are depicted in this painting, which is the dust jacket cover, the spine, and the back cover. And he just did a spectacular job on this. There are 2 players who aren't in the National Hall of Fame, and They are Derek Jeter and Mariano Rivera. And Bill said, if I'm going to do this, I want to put those two guys in there. And I said, well, okay, yeah, they're going to be in the Hall of Fame. So, you know, that'll keep the book current. So, and that's Bill up top doing his thing. He was a spectacular artist, probably the most preeminent sports artist, and especially baseball artist. He passed away last year. Actually, had a heart attack. So, anyway, that concludes my presentation. And yeah, do we have questions? Okay.
Actually, I wanted to ask about Dusty Baker and his introduction, the foreword that he did for you. If you could just go a little bit over what he had to say.
Yeah, Dusty acknowledged that this was pretty special. And Dusty played for 4 different teams, so he knows how difficult it is to play for only one franchise. But his comment is that these guys are they're the kind of the essential players in Major League history. And his comment was, they're all ambassadors for the game of baseball. They're high quality people that people root for, you know, as we talked about. And so his way of explaining it was these guys are ambassadors for the game of baseball. And also he acknowledges that in the foreword that this really serves as a history of Major League Baseball in the 20th century, because if you read these features, just about everything significant that happened in Major League Baseball history is somewhere addressed in this book because of the quality of these players. And the although 177 players isn't a lot, it's enough where you get it's broken down into eras, and in each era there so some significant things happened in the game of baseball, and one player or another was involved in almost every significant part of this. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to sort of, not really a question, but a comment, you know, when you were talking about Dusty Baker, talking about these individuals are ambassadors of baseball and real, you know, just amazing people.
Mm-hmm.
I have never heard of Mr. Travis, the individual who went to serve our country, ever.
Ever. I hadn't either, frankly. I'm a baseball nut,
yeah,
so.
I feel like, thanks to you, I feel like I need to research this individual more and find out more about this heroic person that I'd never heard of, so thank you.
Yeah, and I devote 2 pages.
Take that again just real quick. She was a little off mic, but who are we referring to?
She was referring to Cecil Travis, the gentleman who lost his Hall of Fame career by serving his country. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was so impressed with him after I read about his story and you know who he was, and he never complained. Mm-hmm. He never said, "Gee, I wish that I," you know. He never said a thing about it. He said, "I was proud to serve my country," and you know, just wasn't the same player afterwards. So he played 4 years after he got back, but he was never even close to what he was before he left. So, yeah.
Are there any current players that potentially could be on this list, or are these days gone?
That's a good question. This book is a static book because all of the players in the 20th century who could have qualified have qualified. And if they didn't qualify, they played for another team. But your question, you know, kind of begs the, you know, who is a possible player in the 21st century?
Number 2.
Yeah, yeah. I probably won't be around, Patrick, when that happens. But players like Buster Posey, if you are a baseball Giants fan, you see Buster Posey. He's a classic single franchise guy. I wouldn't be surprised he's going to be a single franchise guy. Joe Mauer, who is a high-quality player and person with the Minnesota Twins, who grew up in Minneapolis. I mean, he's truly a hometown hero. David Wright of the New York Mets, these kind of guys. Yadier Molina, the St. Louis Cardinals, are all potentially that way. But, you know, sometimes it doesn't work out either. So
But I'm familiar with Buster of the
Buster
Giants.
Posey, the catcher, yeah.
And he's quite the community guy. And
Yeah. He's a
so
classic single franchise player. Yeah, he probably, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays his entire career with the Giants. Yeah, just a real humble, solid character, high quality player who's a great leader and great in the clubhouse, a good teammate. Just what all these guys are, you know. And I don't mean to say these guys are perfect. I mean, we have people like Mickey Mantle who whole books have been written about him, about his, you know, faux pas and so forth. His carousing and so forth. But Mickey Mantle, I mean, if you talk to his teammates, they just, to a man, they say, wow, what a great teammate. He was the best teammate we ever had. And Ted Williams would be an example of somebody that was a little bit petulant, you know, during his playing days. Didn't get along very well with the press, but even he, I mean, before the All-Star game in 1999, they had it at Fenway Park, and before the game they trundled him in a golf cart out of right field, and he tipped his hat finally. He never used to tip his hat for anybody, and he's kind of like the most popular baseball player in history. All these all-stars and these all-century guys were around him on the pitcher's mound prior to the game. They had to break it up to play the game because they forgot that, you know, they all wanted to talk to Ted Williams. So, you know, he became the grand old man of baseball, you know, as he aged. So, I mean, and very loyal guy. So, bigger than life.
So in these days of market money, would you say, are we going to see this many players in the future?
That's going to be part of the reason why you're not going to see as many players. But if you look at we saw during the last era, I'm calling the steroids era. My son said, don't call it the steroids era, but it was the steroids era. I mean, that's what dominated. None of these players, however, took steroids. None of the players in the book, which goes to show their high character and they did it the right way. But those were free agent guys, and they all could have played for another team. They all could have signed for more money. None of them did. So there was other things that are involved. You know, Cal Ripken, Tony Gwynn, all those guys. That Chipper Jones from the Atlanta Braves and Todd Helton with the Colorado Rockies. They all could have played for somebody else, but they didn't. So, and they are therefore revered in their hometowns and will continue to be revered. So, yeah.
Do you think
So
that's something unique to baseball, or the people that are attracted to this?
well, baseball careers tend to be longer than the NFL careers because the NFL players, it's like being in a car accident every Sunday, you know. And so the average NFL player is probably 4 years, but you can theoretically you can play baseball for a long time. Some of these people played for 23 years. So it's a longer career, but there are, it's rare, but it's still possible and it's still being done. But what I think my point is that when you see it, you should celebrate it. I mean, it's just it's just amazing that with all the things that could have happened, especially the pitchers. I mean, Walter Johnson pitched for 19 years in the major leagues. I mean, his arm, he could have had an arm injury after 4 years or whatever, but they all that time. So it's just it's amazing that they would play that long, and also that they would play for one team and one team only. So, yeah. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Very much.
Okay.